Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Dana Bass-Solomon, and I'm the CEO of Hollyhock. I get to have the pleasure of representing Hollyhock as we collaborated with the Dalai Lama Center for Peace and Education to bring together this extraordinary evening and next day, bringing Dr. Meg Wheatley to Vancouver. It's pretty exciting for the likes of me who's been inspired by her work for so many years. And so such a pleasure and honor to be here. I'd like to take a moment to offer gratitude to the First Nations people upon whose land we are on. This is the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, and we recognize Aboriginal rights and title, not only here in British Columbia, but throughout North America and the world. I'd like to take a moment also to say a special thank you to our friends at the Simon Fraser University Center for Dialogue, without whose support we might not be right here in this extremely beautiful room, and also the people from the Vancouver Sun who have offered such great support. Then there's all the other people, like the staff at both Hollyhock and the Dalai Lama Center, and all the volunteers who have come together in their silent and beautiful ways to make this possible for all of us to be here. So thank you, and to you for joining us, to take this time out of your life, to use your resources to come here and be with us is really important. When I first started reading Meg's books, I remember something that really meant a lot to me, and that was that an overarching solution to some of the most challenging areas and aspects of these turbulent times, one solution is to create community. And bringing together all the people who are here, both from the people who know about this from the Dalai Lama Center for Peace and Education, through Hollyhock, through the local community, people coming in from the downtown east side and all over Vancouver, and even from farther afield. That's what we are really all about. And so it seems right and true that we're all here making our own little community here this evening. And so the other last little topic I want to mention is that in these times, taking the opportunity to be a leader and to bring out leadership in ourselves and the people around us and our children is one of the most important things that we can do. So having Meg here to inspire us is a special treat. And it really means a lot. So thank you all for being here, and I get to have the pleasure and honor of introducing Lynn Green, who's the CEO of the Dalai Lama Center for Peace and Education. She'll be introducing you to Meg. So welcome, Lynn.
Thanks so much, Dana. I'm also really pleased and honored to welcome all of you here today on behalf of our partners, volunteers, staff, trustees, and others that are associated with both the Dalai Lama Center and Hollyhock. It is a wonderful partnership. We've had a terrific journey together that actually started well over a year ago in planning for this evening. And just walking in here and seeing the volunteers and staff and connecting and working together, and also people who are connected to either Hollyhock or the Dalai Lama Center or both, getting to know each other and connecting as we start the evening has been terrific to see, and a wonderful beginning of the relationship. We know that given this sellout crowd, that Meg needs very little introduction. But we saw all of you so interested in looking at and buying her books and other resources, and chatting with Meg as she was signing the books this evening. And I know that many of you expressed excitement about being here because you've read and learned from Meg already and want to be here because you want to build on that learning. We know Meg as a writer and as a consultant and as a teacher. And we know she's highly respected throughout the world, and we know for sure in Vancouver. As an organizational development consultant, Meg has worked with a full range of institutions, and I was just having a chat with Meg just before we started, recognizing there are quite a few educators in the room here and asking about her work with educators. And I know she's worked with all sorts of systems, including the education systems, and on all continents of the world, and has worked with them as they have struggled in how to maintain their integrity and their direction and effectiveness in turbulent times. Now, hands up. Anyone relate to that topic at all in terms of being in the midst of turbulent times? We know we all are experiencing that, and that's going to be a deeply personal journey for us tonight. Meg has authored 6 books, including Perseverance in 2010, and most recently, Walk Out and Walk On, and the other books that you saw on display this evening. She is the co-founder and president emerita of the Berkana Institute, a global charitable organization which works in partnership with people around the world to strengthen their communities by working with the assets and wisdom that are already present in their people, traditions, and environment. And we know that focus on people's assets and wisdom that they can bring into their community and bring alive in their community is so important, and we know we're experiencing that. As many of us will remember, Meg came to Vancouver during the Dalai Lama's visit in 2009 when she facilitated dialogue amongst business, social, and philanthropic leaders in the spirit of compassion, collaboration, and innovation. This seems to be such a perfect time for Meg to come to Vancouver as we witness the Occupy movement coming to our community and spreading globally, and as we're experiencing such significant social, environmental, and economic change in our homes, in our neighborhood, and across the globe. It's very timely that we're here tonight to explore how we can persevere and thrive in the midst of such turbulent times. Please join me in giving a good Vancouver welcome to Dr. Meg Wheatley.
Hi. Thank you. I'm just delighted to be back in Vancouver. Been here many times for the conference with the Dalai Lama. Also, just a few years ago with the Women's Leadership Revival Tour. A few of you here were there. Probably not the men who are in the group, but the women who are. And I have the great pleasure this evening of being accompanied, Barbara, if you'd come up, by Barbara McAfee, who was with me on the Women's Leadership Revival Tour. We raised a lot of noise and feelings, and Barbara is a very dear friend, and we didn't know we were going to be so color coordinated, but we would like you to notice that. We didn't even talk. So it just shows we're in deep communion here. Yes. Barbara was formerly an organizational consultant. Luckily, she got out with her creativity still intact. Is a singer, songwriter, and has just published her first book called Full Voice, The Art and Practice of Vocal Presence. I am just so thrilled that we're working together again here in Vancouver. So this evening is going to be a combination of my remarks, some questions offered to you, and then some musical moments when we can really think. And we want to start off with music. Why not, right? And I'd like you to just use this moment to honor the great privilege we have to be sitting in such a beautiful facility, to feel so safe, to have what we need, and to have the companionship of each other. Right now, there's a lot of publicity about the 1% of the people who are basically taking most of the wealth and letting the rest of us just get on with, becoming poorer and poorer. But that's economic wealth. Even if we were to think for a moment of 7+ billion people, how many of those 7+ billion would have this kind of opportunity? I don't even think it's 1%, do you? So as we just come to this place, I would just offer that we just take this moment to feel our gratitude for being so beautifully privileged to have this time together.
Thank
Barbara?
you, Meg. Didn't need to be this way. The sun could set the same way every day. Instead, we've got a daily blessing that takes the breath away. There could have been one kind of rose in the world, or only 3 shades of blue. And the cardinal and crow might have had to share one song between the two. But it's a lavish world, a lavish world, a lavish world. It didn't need to be this fine. The smell of sun-warmed white pine, the eating of water and skiing on a cool northern lake. People might have lived without dancing, or in silence instead of song. And the flavors upon the tongue might have been less sweet or tart or strong. But it's a lavish world, a lavish world, a lavish It didn't need to be sublime. The universe inventing all the time. Millions of minuscule gestures that keep life alive. People might have shared one language, calling God by name. It could have been different. It might have all been the same. But it's a lavish world, a lavish world, lavish world. It didn't need to be this way. The sun could set the same way every day.
Thank you. So I think this evening, what I'd like to lead us through is an inquiry in how we use the gifts that we have in this world that is very lavish for us and filled with wonder, but is quite a horrific place for too many people on the planet right now. So I want to lead you through, starting first with this question of what time is it for the world? Okay. This might be a little depressing. I think that's a good thing, actually. What I'm really trying to do here is, if we can look reality directly in the face, then we have the potential to know how to serve. And that's the purpose of anything I'm going to say, is where can we each make a contribution to this world at this time? So for those of you who are working in organizations of any kind, and it doesn't matter which country you're in, this is definitely the era of doing more with less. I would just believe that we are not going to see money again for many years, that sort of easy affluence or thinking we had the money we need. We certainly have other resources that I'm hoping we will start to use, such as good relationships, such as community. But in most organizations now, people are feeling more and more squeezed, like this poor fish, to really do more and more with fewer and fewer resources. And one of those resources that's disappearing is time, right? So this is also an era, and again, I'm sad to report, having just spent quite a lot of time in Australia, which was also like, used to be like the laid-back capital country, in my estimation, where people remembered that you worked so that you could have a life. Do you even remember that time, here? But even there, the anxiety and stress of this time is leading to more conflict. Canada, which used to be so mellow, I'm from the U.S., we're the leaders in this, by the way. Olympic gold medal athletes in terms of polarization. In fact, the most common word used now is fracturing, not even polarized. We're just broken in many ways. But even in Canada, you look at your last national election, that was pretty nasty for Canada, And I know many of you are worried about that trend. It's not seen as an anomaly that there were, it was more vindictive and mean-spirited and slanderous, but it's also seen as the way things are going. And that is a general trend worldwide. And it's, of course, a time of fear and anxiety. Palpable in many places now. Just think about in your day-to-day work environments how easily you or other people get angry or upset, or how quickly you get frustrated. We're going to talk more specifically about these things in a little while, but this is just a general rise in anxiety and fear. And I don't think I need to say anything about this. It's clearly if we could just stop for a few moments and instead of trying to pin the blame on someone, if we could just sit down and start thinking together again. But instead of thinking together, we're just very quickly trying to get the target off ourselves, or we're denying that the problem is as serious as it is. I find that this denial of what's really going on to be far more de-energizing than knowing what's going on. I also recently heard a new maxim, which is, it's not whether you win or lose, it's how quickly you can place the blame on someone. That's the current politics. So it's led to the revival of this poster, which is from a while ago. And then recently, one of my sons, who's 27, sent me this. But then there's also the opportunity that any time of chaos offers us. And St. Augustine from the 4th century said, this catastrophe, I don't know which one he was referring to in the 4th century, but he said this catastrophe is not the end, but the beginning. History does not end so. It is the way its chapters open. And I don't want to make light of the direness of this time and the messes we're in, and the fact that we have so many complex problems that we're just not willing to approach with good thinking and good companions. I don't want to make light of that at all. But the other side of it is there are a few of us, and all it takes is a few, as Margaret Mead said many years ago, never underestimate the power of a small group of dedicated people to change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever does. So I'm very focused that we don't need critical masses of people using this time as opportunity. We need critical connections among a few of us. And that's part of my motivation for this evening, is just to see if you resonate with this sense that this is a time of opportunity, but it's not that we're blindly going in saying, oh, this is great. This is a terrible time for most people on the planet. And I want to hold that in our awareness. But there are people now who are writing about, speaking about this sea change, which is happening. And this is a good thing. So can you all read that from the back? Yeah. What I love about this is that, she says that this is a deepness within our culture to find a more centered life, a slower life. How many of you have thought about that? How many of you have raised the question about, or made a statement to friends or partners that my life is out of balance? I have to find balance in my life. I never did find balance in my life, but I did find meaning and purpose, and that, I think that's okay. So another columnist, Gaylord Ferguson, who's a Buddhist teacher, said that this is how we're going to progress. It's through developing strong, healthy communities. This is a big part of my workout now because I have learned in the poorest of places, most economically poor places, I want to distinguish that their poverty is material. Because what I've learned there is that they have community, and if you have community as human beings, we can get through anything. So this is a very hopeful trend as well. And then from an economist at Harvard, she's written a book called Plenitude, which is a very nice old-fashioned sounding word, and that we're rediscovering the richness and the wealth that's available. This is the work of my own institute, Berkana Institute, where we say that we're working with people who have already discovered that the wealth that they need is in themselves, in their human creativity. It's in their traditions, whatever that culture is. That's also a source of great wealth and grounding for people these days. And it's in their environment, how we work with the natural resources and the power of place. So I find these very important things to focus on in the context of a world which is in deep distress. So, in answer to this question, what time is it? I want to bring in now one of my favorite writers, Thomas Merton. Do you know his work? I mean, he was one of our great philosophers, activists, Catholic, mystic, hermit, etc. And I take this quite seriously. Humans have a responsibility to their own time. Not as if they could seem to stand outside it and donate various spiritual and material benefits to it from a position of compassionate distance. That's called spiritual sarcasm, by the way. Right? Humans have a responsibility to find themselves where they are in their own proper time and place in the history to which they belong and to which they must inevitably contribute. Either, these are our choices, our response or our evasions, either truth and act or mere slogan and gesture. This defines the choices we make. And in everything that I'm saying tonight, the common denominator here is that we have to be conscious, We have to be aware of what's going on. And then we have to consciously choose who we want to be for this time. So this is currently my favorite quote because I find it very provocative. It's from Chogyam Trungpa, who's the founder of Shambhala Buddhism. And I just love this. We cannot change the way the world is, but here's the path he lays out. But by opening ourselves to the world as it is. So encountering reality, not turning our heads from what's going on. Being big-hearted enough to take in all this pain and suffering that's around us. It's by opening ourselves to the world, truthfully letting it in, that we find that gentleness, decency, and bravery are available. And not just for ourselves, but perhaps for other human beings as well. I have not read anything like this anywhere else. And what I find unique about this and so important is that if we want to be brave and we want to be decent people and we want to be gentle, not enraged, we want to be gentle in our actions. That's a synonym for compassion and open-heartedness. If we want these qualities, the path to finding them is to let the world in. And yet the world is so frightening and so bombarding us with things that it's often difficult to realize that if we can open our hearts, then we can discover the very qualities we need to serve the world. You are at the keyboard, which means she has a song in mind.
I do. And the spark for this came from a conversation I heard with Barbara Marx Hubbard many years ago, where she said, perhaps in these times we should replace the words, I love you, with the words, I will stay awake with you. I thought that was a good idea. And the other piece that this came from was some conversations I heard with the Benedictines I was hanging out with at the time, and they said, our order kept culture alive during the Dark Ages. And then when it was okay for it to come back out again, we brought it back out. I swear by the stars I am made of, I will stay awake with you. If it should fall apart, I will remember the heart. A dark age, and the shadows descended. There were those who circled round to keep the fire alight, attended through the night. The power of life, through which everything is made, move among us and within us in this quickening. I bow to the millions of people whose faces I will never see, who work so faithfully to stay awake with me. Fierce joy and the song we are singing carry us beyond the fear lies I am made of. I will stay awake with you if it should fall apart. I will remember the heart.
Thank you. So when Barbara and I speak of the heart, I think we're both using it in the much more inclusive, non-Descartes, never split apart the mind from the heart. Because the word in Sanskrit is chitta. If you've heard of bodhicitta, it's defined as awakened heart, but chitta actually means heart-mind, and it's right here. It's not in the organ, it's in the center of the body. And I was recently talking to one of our great neuroscientists, Richie Davidson, who works frequently now with His Holiness Dalai Lama. And he said that many years ago, when he was just an up-and-coming neuroscientist, it was kind of scary to start to think that he might take his research in the direction of compassion. And it was only because His Holiness the Dalai Lama asked him, encouraged him to take that brave step that he did. And then he had access to these very wonderful monks who were great meditators, and they went to Dharamsala, where the Dalai Lama lives, and they had all these machines. This is about 25 years ago. And they had all these machines for wiring the brain so they could check brain waves of these great meditators. And he described the scene as there were 3 monks sitting who'd been chosen because they were such deep meditators. And they wired them up with all these, weird space-like helmet kind of electrical things. And the other monks were sitting in a circle just watching this. And after they wired them up, the monks just started laughing uproariously. And they thought, Richie Davidson said, well, we thought it was because they look so bizarre with these, steel helmets and wires coming out of their heads. But they asked them, they said, what are you laughing at? And the monks just said, well, you're wiring up the wrong part. It's here. This is where mind is, And then I asked Richie if he started to do that kind of testing. He said, yes, we are now. But it took, 20 plus years to get past that ridiculous falsehood that our brains are separate from our hearts. So that's why I go back to the Sanskrit word chitta. So anytime you hear the word heart out of my mouth, you could just say heart mind, and I would feel better about it. Okay. So all of this raises, however we take in the world, however we open our hearts and minds to this world that needs us, the question that I believe we need to ask, and again, this is about conscious choice, is who do we choose to be for this world, in service to this world? You may be a formal leader, you may be an informal leader. You may be a teacher, you may be working in healthcare, you may be a mother, you may be a father, you may be a joyful grandparent at this point, you may be working in politics. Wherever you are, what is your choice in how to use that position? And a corollary question here is, how do you think of yourself? If I was to ask you, so who are you? It's a great American question. First meet someone. It's like, well, what do you do? We don't care about the person. We just want to know their role. And if I were to ask that of you, would you say that you're a teacher or a mom or a student or a manager? You might say, in a different country, you might say, I'm a child of war. I'm a survivor of war. In this culture, you might say, I'm a recovering alcoholic, or I'm a recovering drug addict, or I'm a child of an abusive family, or I'm a cancer survivor. These are all very common terms we use to describe ourselves. But the key here is to actually question whether the name you are using to describe yourself is big enough to contain your whole life. Most of those names that I listed, even though in the case of being a cancer survivor or a recovering addict, this is a long, hard journey, and it's worth naming. But the question is it big enough to hold your future? And I'm taking this from the work of a man whose name I never remember, so I'm not going to remember it tonight and break the pattern, who put this question out to a group that I was in years ago. And he said, choose a name that's big enough to summon your courage. And I would add to that, choose a name for yourself that's big enough to scare you, that requires you to be fearless. Now, one of those names, I work with people who call themselves activists, world workers, pioneers, edge walkers. We're looking for big language here. The term that I'd like to offer tonight is the one that's most powerful for me personally, so you don't have to go there with me, but I did want to talk to you about this, which is that of being a spiritual warrior, or a warrior of the heart, mind. And some people are really taken back by this word warrior because it seems so aggressive, but the Tibetan word for warrior is pawo, and it means one who is brave, one who never uses aggression to accomplish their ends. So my own definition now of what I'm personally trying to be in myself and inspire others to is, can we be spiritual warriors whose active bravery is that we commit to trying hard not to add to the aggression and fear of this time. This is very practical and very, very hard. It means that when you're in a situation, if you're sitting in a meeting and someone attacks you, or someone insults you, or someone ignores you, that you pause for a moment and you choose not to add to the aggression that's already in the room. Or if your teenager is screaming at you, I raised a lot of kids, I went through this a lot. So if your teenager is screaming at you, you don't add to that aggression. You pause. Maybe you sit down. Or if you're putting out a proposal or you're trying to motivate a coworker or someone that you support as a leader, that you make sure you're not using fear. Like, you need to do this by then, because if you don't, that's fear. That's fear-based. That's punishment and rewards, right? So this is a really big bucket, or a big sandbox, I guess, to play in, that to choose to monitor one's actions on these two variables. Am I adding to fear? Am I adding to aggression? That's enough for a lifetime. That's a kind of bravery that I think, especially in this day and age, it takes more and more courage and attention and conscious choice not to go down the when attacked, attack back. Or when someone's made you scared or you're feeling scared, not to spread that fear and anxiety. So, again, you're going to see a lot of quotes from Chogyam Trungpa, because he's one of my root teachers within Shambhala Buddhism. And he said, one time he said this to his wife. She was complaining that she wasn't happy. And he said, "My dear, we are not interested in happiness. We're interested in sanity." And then in another place, he said the second quote, that someone has to plant the seed so that sanity can blossom in this world. I like that. You know, I have friends whose consulting firm is called Sane Systems. That's kind of, I like that. You know, but to think about what would sane behavior mean in whatever context that you're acting in, or whatever place you're leading in, or whatever place you're parenting in. What is sanity? It's certainly not fear, it's not irrationality, it's not, I mean, I just feel that everything we see on television these days goes in the category of insane, unbelievable, and, you know, every time I think I've been shocked enough, remember I'm American, so have some pity here, but every time I think I've heard it all, I will not be surprised by anything again. Then I turn on the television this morning. I was in Washington, D.C., and one of the things on the news was how school children in a town in Ohio could not go to school today because these wild animals had escaped. Tigers and lions and bears were actually roaming a 12-mile area of Ohio. So it just gets crazier and crazier and crazier, you know. I mean, snow days are one thing, but wild animals is brand new in the realm of teaching. So not adding to aggression, not adding to fear, and trying in our actions to practice sanity. Whatever that means to you, because this doesn't have one definition. But just think about that, because now I want to talk about perseverance. So this is the book cover. It's a much smaller book than this. This is a special edition size. Haul it around in a truck. When I wrote this book, I wrote it for those of us who are struggling. To remain sane, to not add to fear and aggression in the world. And that was all of my friends and colleagues. It was just getting tougher and tougher. And I found a young woman artist in New Orleans, whose name is on there, Asante Salam. And she showed me this piece. And I want to tell you the story behind it. She's from New Orleans. She evacuated. Her whole family evacuated ahead of Katrina, but they scattered across the United States. And she was in San Diego. She'd been at the art college in Chicago, and she was a very talented artist. But she was having a hard time in San Diego. And one day she went off into a canyon, and with only materials that she had there, she created this beautiful, evocative woman. And if you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, you can tell, see those fold lines? It's a cardboard box. And then all the white is layers and layers of tissue paper that she just tore off and pasted on. And then she found real blossoms, and she glued those on. And then she had a charcoal pencil with her, and she did the rest. For me, that's the essence of perseverance, is noticing that in this lavish world, as Barbara sang to us, that we actually have what we need. We're often looking in the wrong places to discover. We think we need money, we think we need power, we think we need allies at the top. What we actually need is to look around and look more deeply in ourselves to find what we need. And that includes our own very hard-won wisdom at this point. Most of us, if we took the time to reflect even for 10 minutes on a situation, we might discover that we have already seen this before, we've already gone through this before, and we actually know what to do. But what's happening is we're not even taking those 10 minutes any longer. We're just, frantically rushing to get things done, right? So that's the story of the cover. And then the whole book is based on a prophecy from the Hopi nation that a friend of mine who is a Hopi pipe carrier offered to me when I was talking to her. Now I want to tell you a little bit about the Hopi Nation. They live in the U.S. southwest corner in Arizona and New Mexico. They are probably the most peaceful of all American native tribes. And their stewardship is the planet. They have a very painful job at this point. And periodically, they go to the United Nations and present. They issue letters. I've been in gatherings where the same pipe carrier said, I have to read this to you. We were asked to read, spread this letter out to as many people as possible, and it was about the state of the planet, and it was horrible. It was really shocking. So this is who they are. They're very poor materially, but they have a deep, deep vision and a deep prophecy and a deep stewardship that they carry for the rest of us. So in 2000, they issued this prophecy from their mesa in Arizona, and it was addressed to my fellow swimmers. And here's why. Here is a river flowing now very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who are afraid, who will try to hold on to the shore. They are being torn apart and will suffer greatly. Know that the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, and keep our heads above water. So there is a great distinction being made by the people who, in this time of increasing fear and anxiety, will grasp on to the past, will hold on to the old ways, will be terrified. This river that's coming at them, these events that are coming at us, are so scary that we may, feel we just have to hold on ever more tightly to the old. I certainly see this everywhere. And yet the elders say, no, that will cause greater suffering. That won't work. And so the advice from them is that we bravely push off into the middle of the river, having seen its strength and velocity and being scared by it even, but we're willing to be those who push off into the middle of the river, keep our heads above water. That's a big job. That's a really difficult task. This certainly doesn't mean that to stay in the middle of the river, we're just going to push off, abandon everything, and just go with the flow. It doesn't mean that at all. It means we're going to train ourselves, we're going to work hard, we're going to learn how you keep your head above water in the midst of turbulent times. And I want to talk about a few of those skills in another moment. But I want to give you the second part of the prophecy before I do that. Now, Pema Chodron, whose work I hope some of you know, she's a wonderful American Buddhist teacher. She also described this choice we make. She said, the whole world is shook up. So what are you going to do when things are falling apart? Either you're going to hold on to the past and become more fundamentalist, or you're going to live your life as an experiment. And then I listened to a scientist recently on the radio who said, of course we're making it up as we go along. He said, if you're not making it up as you go along these days, you're out of touch with reality, because reality's changing all the time. This is true. So Pema Chodron was expressing the same choices. We either live our life as an experiment, making it up as we go along, that's the middle of the river, or we cling desperately to the shore and become more fixed in our views, more fundamentalist, more argumentative, more right, in our views, and not noticing that this river has a destination. I actually don't know what they mean by that, but it's nice to think that way. I don't know where it's heading, but they do. So those are our choices. But then they give us very practical advice. And I say, see who is there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing seriously, least of all ourselves. For the moment we do, our spiritual growth and journey come to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. There's a lot of wisdom in this. Think of all the people you've met who are taking themselves so damn seriously right now. You know, they have the answer, they know what to do, they know what everyone else should do, and they're more important than anyone else. Or think about all the people who are really trying, this might be you, still trying to make it on your own. And how many of us have realized that we can't survive alone. Nothing living lives alone. It's just not doable. Archbishop Tutu said that the idea of an isolated individual human is like subhuman. None of us can live alone. None of us. So this is very wise advice. I'm going to come back to the final part of the prophecy at the end, and we'll repeat the whole thing because I think it's very beautiful. Now I want to talk specifically about some of the aspects of persevering that I think are so important. This is the Chinese character for perseverance. And this is what it is. It's a knife suspended over a heart. What on earth does that mean? Of course, it's Chinese, so you could use it in any way you want to and make it sound authoritative. We throw around all these Chinese proverbs all the time. But I think this one is particularly wonderful. Having spent a lot of time with it myself, this is what perseverance feels like. It's that you go out in the world, you're doing your work, you really feel passionate about it, you're excited you found this calling, and then suddenly you get slammed. Or someone comes after you, or misrepresents you, or doesn't understand that you're really a good person, that you're really motivated. That would be one example for me of a knife coming over my heart. You know, the thing about persevering is that it starts with passion. It starts with the heart really full, and yes, I want to serve this cause. Yes, I love this person. Yes, I want to do this job. And we're really excited about it, and our hearts are really engaged. And then something terrible happens. So the question about, or the idea of perseverance is that you can start with passion. But if you're not prepared for those moments when the knife is right over your heart, when you're being attacked or misinterpreted or the work isn't going well, if you're not prepared for those moments, passion will not get you through. Perseverance is about discipline, not about passion. It's about the ability to keep going. It's also about the ability to discern when we should just step back, when it's really not working. When we don't have the right ideas or the right timing or the right companions. It's also knowing when to give up intelligently. So I want to talk about some of the things that bring us down. But one other thing about this Chinese ideograph that was explained to me by a Zen woman priest in Australia. Her teacher had given this as her lifelong image or koan in Zen. And she felt that it was all about living your life in such an open-hearted way that it kept getting sliced open. So it kept opening wider and wider and wider. So I offer that to you as well. But I think the Chinese got it right, even if there's more than those two explanations, for sure. Now, when I wanted to write something about persevering, it was because of all the people in my life, especially my friends and colleagues and people I was working with, who I knew were just being challenged by this time. And I received a text from a woman CEO. She runs one of the largest nonprofits in the country. She's a brilliant leader, very focused on community and people. And she was sitting in a meeting with FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, after Hurricane Ike, not Katrina, but Hurricane Ike, hit Houston. And people's homes had been devastated, and nothing was being done to fix their roofs. The money actually did not arrive for 16 months. With Katrina, the money didn't arrive for 17 months. So people are living with blue tarps over their houses and struggling to get by. And she's sitting in a meeting where the officials from Washington are just stonewalling, just being purely bureaucratic and really giving a terrible time to these people. FEMA has changed under President Obama. It's now very community-focused, very responsive, and is there to help. But this was during the Bush years. And so she sends me texts frequently. I could just write a whole book on leadership based on her texts. And this was the one that I really understood that perseverance is a choice, because it read this: every day I make a choice not to give up. She's sitting there in a meeting. She's fed up. She's angry. She's enraged. People are suffering because the feds won't give the money. And they're putting people through the most Mickey Mouse procedures and form filling. And this is what she said. That moment, that day, that place, that frustration, she made a choice to keep going. And periodically she has to just stop. But when I read this, I thought, this is the heart of it. It's being conscious about what's going on and then making a choice about what we want to do, how we want to respond. Not being reactive, but being intelligent. This is where sanity comes in. Being intelligent, making decisions based on pausing, thinking about things, reflecting even, and then going ahead. So here are some of the things that take us down, that make it hard to persevere. We have to learn how to deal with all these very dark situations, being criticized, getting angry, failing, things not working, feeling anxious and stressed. Do you ever feel any of these? Like, what time is it? Right? These are very common emotions. And I think what's important to stress here is that unless we learn how to consciously work with these are circumstances of everyday life right now. Unless we learn how to work with them intelligently and sanely, we cannot persevere. So this is where we have to become very conscious and very thoughtful in our own lives. And but before I talk about these in specific, I'd like you to think about your families for a moment. Who in your family lineage has taught you about perseverance? And think about how far back you have to go, or how recent, how close to you that model of perseverance is. Can you all think of someone? Because if you can't think about them, then you just don't know enough about your family. Because you wouldn't be here. None of us would be here unless we had relatives, ancestors who struggled and persevered. So when I talk about perseverance, it's not a new skill. I mean, we are the evidence of people who persevered. In some ways, what's interesting for me about this whole subject of perseverance is we weren't brought up in a culture that thought this would be necessary. We were brought up in a culture that taught most of us, maybe not all of you, some of you might have escaped this, but think about all of the coaching, all of the cajoling, all of the motivational speakers who are out there, all of the processes we've been taught. Create a vision. Set your goal. Make sure it's high, big. And then day by day work on it. And you will achieve your goal. You know, all it takes is good intent, clear intent, bold vision, a little bit of courage maybe, and you'll get there. I mean, you know, the dominant thought form until recently was that life is always getting better and better, and we could make it better for ourselves by just taking control of it. David White, the poet, who's spoken, I know, in Vancouver often, said that if you think life is always getting better and better, you're going to miss half of it. So, and we're in that other half right now. So I don't think it's about feeling passionate, although I love to feel passion for my work, and I do. And I don't think it's enough to have a bold vision and just say, I'm going to do this. This is what I want. I'm going to do this. I don't think that's it anymore. I think it's actually learning to move with life on life's terms. And you know what? Every other generation has done this. We were the ones who thought we could get away without needing to struggle, work hard, all of that. So, as Chogyam Trungpa said to his students, it's just your turn. Okay? This is nothing new. It's just our turn to serve the world. And I think we're stepping up to that. So I'd like to ask you a few questions and then give you a few moments to actually reflect on these. These are meant to show you how you're being affected by these times. What's going on, how you're reacting to any of the dynamics I described earlier of fear, stress, no time, no money, etc., etc. So how meaningful does your life feel to you right now? And what's the quality of your relationships right now? Are you becoming more critical, more short-tempered, more judgmental? And are you in environments where that's what you're getting back from people? People are more critical of you? How easily are you triggered now? How quickly do you become angry or frustrated? And what's your personal level of stress? Nope. So look at those for a moment and see which one pops out at you. Just go for one. Whichever one just pops out at you, we're just going to give you a couple of minutes to think about it. Hopefully this isn't the only time in your day when you've had time to reflect, but it might be. Barbara? So just 2 minutes of this. So may I suggest that whichever of these feels like something that requires more thought, that you take that home. And maybe you use it to start a conversation with someone close to you, or a good friend, or a partner, or a colleague. But these questions are worth thinking about, because they're, for me, indications of how the environment that we're swimming in, this very difficult time, how it is showing up in our own behaviors. So I'll just offer that as something you could do when you go home or go back to work tomorrow. Now I want to talk specifically about a few of these points. So first I want to talk about criticism. We're not going to do this in great detail because we don't have a lot of time, but is your environment becoming more critical? Do you feel that people are quicker to judge you, or that you're making snapshot decisions about people? You know, we live in a time when there's a thumb up or a thumb down on every stupid thing on the internet. You know, it's like we're being asked for our opinions about everything. Like, was this article useful? Was this book review useful? Do you like this song? Do you know? Now, just historically, this started with the Roman Empire. And it was, in the Colosseum, when people would vote thumbs up or thumbs down if they wanted a gladiator to live or die. People were really busy putting their thumbs up and down while the emperors were controlling their lives. Now, if you don't see a historical parallel there, I do. I do. But it's becoming, especially among young people, just instant condemning judgment about everything. So how is this showing up in your life? Well, the one thing I could say, again, historically, I hope this helps, is that 2,500 years ago, Buddha said this. This has been going on through the ages. They criticize the silent ones, they criticize the talkative ones, they criticize the moderate ones. There's no one in the world who escapes criticism. There never was and never will be. Nor is there now the wholly criticized or the wholly approved. So what I take from this, and the reason I offer it to you, is we don't have to take this so seriously. I want to distinguish between feedback that is helpful and feedback that is useful. But in this current environment, judgments are just flying through the air all the time. And if you just open yourself to that and don't know your own self and don't trust your own self, then you'll just get battered by this increasingly vindictive and critical environment that we're living in. So really trusting yourself, knowing what you're good at. We can all sense when criticism is justified, but so much of it now is just very mean-spirited and excessive. So you can think about that if you like. And then another way in which criticism shows up is around this question. You like this guy, huh? This is a blue-footed booby in the Galapagos Islands. And he's actually a very attractive seagull from the side. But in the Galapagos, the animals rule and humans aren't even noticed. And I was about to step on him when he just squawked at me, and I just went click, and there he was. It's just about my favorite photo. But let's go to the question now also. How do you react when something goes wrong? Like when you know you screwed up. When you know what you just said you shouldn't have said. When you got some feedback and you knew that, yeah, that was true. I'm not talking about random criticism now. I'm talking about when you actually suddenly see that you made a mess of this, How do you react? So one way to react is to celebrate the fact that you noticed you screwed up. That's called loving kindness towards oneself. I'm quite serious here. In our Western culture, we're so good at finding fault and being self-critical, and we don't realize that over time what it does is it develops self-hatred. And from self-hatred, you can't do anything good for the world, and you have a pretty miserable life. And yet this is in the air. I mean, I was with one of my granddaughters when she was 6, I think. And she did something wrong, and she just stood there and she said, "I hate myself." I thought, oh, where did this come from? Because I don't think she would have heard that at home, but maybe she did. But this quality to be able to look at ourselves and to not take ourselves so seriously. It's like, oh, there I go again. Oh, I said I wasn't going to put my foot in my mouth anymore, and I did it. But to approach that with joy that we actually see it, because then we cannot do it so much. This is a very powerful path. It's called friendliness towards oneself. Treating yourself as you would be to a friend. Treating yourself with loving kindness as you would to your best friend. And once we develop that, that's what it really means to take nothing personally. Least of all ourselves. That's what it means to really eliminate struggle, is when we can look at what we did and maybe laugh at it, or maybe just enjoy the fact that we are now aware that I'm a really stupid person in this situation. This is not easy work, but it's very, very beneficial. It's very beneficial. I mean, I now, when I get down on myself, I've been working on this for a long time, I'll go look at myself in the mirror. I'm telling you this because it actually works, not because I want you to know I'm an idiot at some parts of my life, but I'll just go look at myself in the mirror and say, I know you're trying really hard, Meg. Because that's what I'd say to my kids. So that's one of my definitions of being friendly to myself. What are you going to sing for us, Barbara?
Well, you're speaking in the song lyrics, so I thought we'd do the song.
Okay.
It's called What If? How would I live if I knew I was good, unbound, set free from the habits of should? If something deep inside my soul was completely trustworthy, totally whole, how would my days unwind if I overrode that chatter in my mind? Stop tearing myself down for major redesign and just live my life. Of comparing, contrasting till I make myself sick. Just might forgo the carrot, give up the stick. What if I knew every break could mend? If I cut myself the same slack I'd offer a friend. What if there was no fortress to defend and I just live my life? Crap I wished would leave was a source of compost for my rarest seed? What if all this striving to be my best was just self-hatred in a fancy dress? What if I found magic in the ordinary, lighten up the load that I carry, so you won't read on my tombstone on my dying day, I got it all done, died anyway. I live my life before I died. I live my life.
Thank you. Got it all done, died anyway. Darn. So it's great because we're not taking ourselves too personally right now, right? And being able to laugh at ourselves is essential. But also realizing that whatever we're struggling with is not an indication of who we are, necessarily. So I wanted to offer what I also find to be an extremely helpful teaching from Chogyam Trungpa. Success is not a reward, and pain is not a punishment. These are just part of life. And like everything else in life, they come and go. One of my favorite poems from Jane Hirschfield, who's a Buddhist poet, wonderful poet, it starts out, you were happy, then you were sad, then happy again, then not. That's really how it is. And so to realize that these moments when we're in deep pain, they will pass, because life is 50% down, 50% up. I don't know, it's cyclical for sure. But just noticing that when we're trying to hold on to something that's deeply pleasurable, that we feel is great success, it doesn't mean we're a good person. It means we're just in that cycle right now. And that when we're going through real pain, it's not that we're being punished. It's just part of life. How we react to the pain and how we react to the moments of pleasure makes all the difference. We can either try and hold on to the shore and then we will suffer greatly, or we can just try and let it move through us, knowing that everything in life is changeable. Okay, I just want to talk about 3 more things. And this is about aggression. Barbara actually took this picture of me. It was a live hippo. Yes, it was. Yeah, I propped it open with my hands. Yeah. But what's your response when you encounter aggression? When someone's driving in an aggressive way, or someone pushes you aside in a queue, or someone attacks you at a meeting, or someone just randomly starts yelling at you. Do you have those experiences in Canada yet? They're coming. They're coming. There's so many angry people out in the world these days. But what's your reaction? So we have 2 responses. We can either get aggressive or not. And His Holiness Dalai Lama said this, which is a wonderful, profound teaching. We never solve aggression with aggression. Aggression is only solved with peace. This is how we would achieve world peace. Unfortunately, none of our leaders know this. Quite seriously, we just keep pushing more and more aggression out in the world. And so we're living with the consequences of this. And then finally, I'd just like to ask you a few personal questions. How are you preparing yourself? How are you strengthening yourself for what's ahead? Do you think your life is going to get any easier? Do you think the world situation is going to ease up? Do you think the recession is going to end anytime soon? I mean, if you're thinking of retiring, then you can't answer these questions. Okay? But you can't retire because you don't have any money anymore in retirement funds. But given your state now, how much more can you take on? You know, I've been talking about serving the world, yes. But one of the problems we get into is those of us who do try and keep our hearts open, we see more and more problems. We see more and more suffering that we want to help relieve. And so we take on more and more projects. We take on more work. It's a kind of heroism. It's based on compassion. It doesn't lead anywhere good. It leads to exhaustion. It leads to overwhelm. It leads to burnout. It leads to just saying, I can't take this anymore. I've got to find an easier job. And one of the questions that I've been in for many years, and it's a very personal question also, is if things aren't going to improve radically in the next 5 years, can I, or those I work closely with, can we keep going at this pace? And that's the question I offer to you. Yes to keeping our hearts open. Yes to encountering reality fully. But no to taking on more and more and more. I mean, I do believe we have to, one of the ways we strengthen ourselves is to pay careful attention to our health and to what nourishes us and do more of that. So, I'm not talking about vacations. I'm actually talking about doing the things that could look selfish and that sometimes you're told are selfish. But in fact, you're doing them so you can be strong for the future. That's not selfish. That's practical. I mean, do we want to be people who just get sick? There are more than enough of those. 30% of days lost in Canada, at least 30% of days lost to work are caused by physical illness now and emotional distress. Can we keep going at this pace? I don't think so. And you have to assess this for yourself. But a lot of people recoil from thinking about taking care of themselves because it's seen as selfish. And I just want to reframe that and say, this isn't selfish. This is the routine in an airplane. Put your mask on first before you attend to others. And that's what we're doing. When we need rest, when we need time to think and reflect, things that actually revive us and make us more able to serve, we need to take those times. You need to be with the people and be in the places that nourish you. Otherwise, you won't be here much longer. So this is the last question. How often do you experience something of this quality of peacefulness? I was once giving a seminar, and it was remote, and people were calling in, and someone called in and said, what if you've never experienced this? So I wonder if that's true for any of you. What if you've never experienced peace? It is available. It's always inside us. And it takes discipline and commitment to discover it. So whatever your personal way of finding peace and knowing that you carry peace within you, whatever that is, it could be running, could be walking your dog. It could be playing an instrument. It could be art or pottery or something where you're working with your hands. It could be riding a horse, whatever it is. It could be daily prayer. Meditation is a big one in my book. But whatever it is, please do it. And please do it with clarity that you need this in order to stay of service. In order to be out in the world, you need to be able to carry peace with you. Pay attention to what you surround yourselves with. What kind of music do you listen to driving to work? I now am a big advocate that we should all turn off the news, because it's not news. It's just incessant, repetitious fear-mongering in most cases. But you can make your own choice in that. It's really helped me a lot, I have to say. I just don't turn on the news. Even the reporters I like. I'll read it when I have control over it, but I'm not going to get into that franticness. But pay attention to what you're listening to in the car. Pay attention to your home environment, your office, where you go to relax and calm down. Just pay attention, because we don't get this now in most external places. So please pay attention to this, because we need you for the long term. So I'm going to end with two thoughts. And one is that this is how the world changes. This is one of our great American historians, Howard Zinn. He really told the truth. He died about 2 years ago now. We don't have to wait for some grand utopian future, because the future is an infinite succession of present moments. And to live now, as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory. What if we could be the people who are embodying the behaviors that we want to see in others, that we hope are available to our children or grandchildren? What if we were people who refrained as much as we could from aggression, who didn't use fear, who tried to be present, who tried to cultivate qualities of inner peacefulness so that they could be offered to others? What if we were people who, by our very way of acting, were living the future now? Because that's how it will change. That's how it will change. And it doesn't take a lot of us. It takes critical connections, not critical mass. So let me close with the Hopi Prophecy once more. It has a really nice ending. Here is a river flowing now very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid, who will try to hold on to the shore. They are being torn apart and will suffer greatly. Know that the river has its destination. The elders say, we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, and keep our heads above water. And I say, see who is there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing seriously, least of all ourselves. For the moment we do, our spiritual growth and journey come to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration, for we are the ones we have been waiting for.
May you breathe easy. May your heart be light. to invite you to sing now. And please don't take yourself seriously enough to think you can't. Because this is one word and one note. This is how it goes. Yes! Try that. Yes! You sound good. Yes! Now we're a community. We've sung together. May you know your beauty through your loved one's eyes. May you face every change with a taste for surprise. May you welcome each stranger as a some harmonies. Yes, 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 yes. You're marinating in it. May we hold all who suffer with loving care. May our being together ease the loads that we bear. May we take up the habit of happiness. May we dwell in the spirit. Yes. Okay, I'm going to do one more wrinkle. You've been sitting and you're very well behaved. But you can stand now as you're able. And as my friend Margie suggested, you can make the Y with your body if you want to. It'll look beautiful. Here we go. Yes! Oh, that's gorgeous. Yes! 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 Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg, for sharing your wisdom and leadership with us, and for Barbara sharing your beautiful music to augment this experience. And thank you to all of you, our treasured guests.